So what if I told you there's a secret? I mean a truly profound idea that you find woven into countless philosophies, and it even pops up in the bizarre world of quantum physics. And that secret is this: you are the creator of your own reality, not just with your hands, but with your mind, with the very power of your consciousness.
This quote from the mystic Neville Goddard, man, it just cuts right to the chase. It's saying it's not what you want or what you even pray for that shapes your life. Nope. It's what you are fundamentally, deep down conscious of being. That core feeling, that state of being, that's the real creative force.
So, the big question is this whole thing just a clever psychological trick? You know, a kind of self-hypnosis? Or could it actually be a description of how reality itself works? Well, that's the mystery we're going to try and unravel today. We're going to explore a model that actually tries to map out this strange territory.
Okay, first up, mapping infinite realities. To really get our heads around this pretty abstract idea, we're going to use a framework called reality transurfing. It gives us a structured way to visualize how we might actually navigate between all these different potential realities.
So this model kicks off with a concept called the alternative space. The easiest way to think about it is like a metaphysical library. And in this library, it contains the book for every possible version of your life, every choice you could ever make, every outcome, every potential you. It all exists right now, simultaneously, as pure information.
So the life you're living right now, that's just one single path, or what the model calls a lifeline, winding its way through this infinite space. But here's the crucial part. You're not stuck on this one path. The model suggests that your disciplined thoughts, your inner state of being, are what allow you to actually shift from one lifeline to a totally different one, basically choosing a new script for your life. Okay, so how do you actually do that? Well, reality transurfing lays out a pretty clear method. First, you define your goal by visualizing the end result, the final slide, as if it's already a done deal. Second, and this is key, you reduce its importance. You don't obsess over it, because that just creates resistance. And third, you back it all up with intention, the firm, calm decision to both have and act. All right, next section, echoes in quantum theory. Now I know this all might be sounding a little out there, pure philosophy, right? But what's so fascinating is how these metaphysical ideas have a startling echo in the super strange world of quantum physics. And this is where things get truly mind-bending. So, the core metaphysical idea we've been playing with is that all potential realities exist at the exact same time. You just happen to experience the one that you're tuned into. Okay? Now hold that thought, because we're about to see what a branch of theoretical physics has to say about that. This is the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. It's a real theory that suggests that every time a quantum event has more than one possible outcome, the universe actually splits. It branches into multiple universes, and each possible outcome becomes real in its own separate world. I mean, how much does that sound like a scientific parallel to the alternative space? And the basis for this wild theory comes from things like the quantum bit, or qubit. Now, we don't need to get bogged down in this complex diagram. Just focus on the core idea. A normal computer bit is either a 0 or a 1. A qubit can be both at the same time. It's in a state of pure potential. This just shows that at the most fundamental level, reality isn't one fixed thing. It's a realm of possibilities, just waiting for an outcome. Which leads us to our next section, the consciousness puzzle. Because this brings up a massive question. If reality starts out as just a wave of potential, what is it that chooses one outcome? What collapses that wave into the single, solid world we all experience? Well, some of the boldest theories out there in both physics and philosophy point to one thing: the observer, consciousness itself. And look, this isn't some fringe idea. This is Nobel Prize-winning physicist Roger Penrose. And he's arguing that our entire understanding of the physical world is fundamentally incomplete, precisely because it has no room for consciousness. He thinks we're missing a huge piece of the reality puzzle. This all gets into what's known as the hard problem. See, we can explain what the brain does, how it processes information, but we have absolutely no idea why we have a rich, subjective inner experience. Why do we feel the redness of red or the warmth of the sun? The mystery is so deep that some thinkers are starting to speculate that maybe consciousness isn't something the brain produces at all, but maybe it's fundamental to the universe itself.
So let's move on to our next section, a dose of skepticism. Okay, before we get totally carried away, it is absolutely essential to ground this whole conversation. Let's take a hard look at the valid critiques and the counterarguments, because, let's be real, without skepticism, we're not investigating, we're just believing.
First, it's really important to distinguish these ideas from some traditional religions. As you can see, in a framework like Christianity, the ultimate control belongs to a divine God, and our human will is secondary to that. But in the new thought philosophy we're exploring, that creative power, that God principle, is placed squarely inside the individual's own consciousness.
And what about from a purely practical view? I mean, as this Reddit user puts it, a really common criticism is that systems like reality transurfing are just a super complicated way of saying, work hard towards your goal and visualize success. Is it really profound physics, or is it just good old-fashioned psychology dressed up in some fancy esoteric language?
And we have to be really careful of this logical trap here. It's called the Holmesian fallacy. It's when we assume that just because we can't explain something with our current science, a supernatural or metaphysical explanation must be true. It's a really good warning against jumping to conclusions just because we don't have an easy answer right now.
And that brings us to our final section, your creator's toolkit. So keeping all the incredible possibilities and all the healthy skepticism in mind, how can we actually use these ideas? I mean, whether you see this as literal metaphysics or just a really powerful psychological model, let's look at how to put it into practice.
The core principle, the one you hear over and over again, is that the real work starts inside. It's kind of like how a tiny seed contains the entire blueprint for a flower. Your inner state, your assumptions, your feelings, your concept of yourself, that's the blueprint from which your outer reality is going to blossom.
And here we are, right back at the engine of creation. According to Neville Goddard, it is the feeling. It's about appropriating the feeling, the inner assumption of your wish already fulfilled. You don't just think about it, you have to emotionally live from the state of being the person who already has it. And you persist in that assumption even if it feels false at first, until it literally hardens into fact.
Okay, here is a super concrete exercise to put this into practice right now. Grab a piece of paper. On one side, just be totally honest and write down who you believe you are at this moment. On the other side, define the self you want to be. This simple act of defining your future self is the very first step in consciously choosing and starting to actually embody a new reality.
See, Neville taught that your own wonderful human consciousness is the creative power of the universe. He called the infinite concepts you can hold of yourself the many mansions in your Father's house. So this self-identity exercise, it's not just making a to-do list, it's you consciously choosing which of these infinite mansions you want to live in.
And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most crucial question of all. If it's really true that what you consistently assume and feel yourself to be eventually becomes your reality, well then the only real limit is your own imagination and your own courage. So the question isn't just what you want, it's what will you dare to assume.